just before Obama was about to receive a briefing that contained no reference to significant Russian interference. That briefing was called off, and a high-level meeting of White House security officials was convened, after which Obama himself tasked them with a new assessment that would lean toward a more aggressive conclusion. The critical job of divining Russia's motives would be given to the CIA. And
Barack Obama didn't just walk into politics. He floated in like a messiah of modern America. The man who could deliver poetry on the campaign trail and charisma in a single smile. From the moment he gave that 2004 DNC speech, people weren't just listening to a politician, they were buying into a lifestyle brand. Hope and change wasn't just a slogan, it was a subscription service. Posters on dorm walls, coffee mugs with his face, even an aura of untouchable cool that made him seem less like a senator and more like the frontman of a band America couldn't stop screaming for. But as Megyn Kelly slices through with surgical calm and Piers Morgan batters with blunt force honesty, that cool turns out to be theater. Obama wasn't the professor-in-chief. He was the headliner at an open mic night where the teleprompter was his guitar. The myth wasn't born from his achievement. It was engineered from cadence, pauses, and a tone that suggested depth even when substance was paper-thin. The illusion of cool worked brilliantly as a campaign, but illusions, no matter how polished, crack under the harsh light of reality. Asterisk behind the aura of compassion and unity. Obama built a record that Mexicans nicknamed Deporter-in-Chief. More than 3 million deportations during his presidency, far more than Trump yet. The media rarely framed it as cruelty. Families torn apart, children placed in cages. Lives shattered under an administration that publicly preached empathy, but privately enforced policy with steel. Megyn Kelly points out the hypocrisy. The same people who scream about Trump's immigration stance conveniently forget that Obama perfected the playbook. And Piers Morgan twists the knife further, reminding audiences that if Trump had deported those numbers, it would have been front-page news every day. But when Obama did it, it was softened into bureaucratic necessity, wrapped in sterile language. It's this disconnect between image and reality that makes the legacy so fragile under scrutiny. Obama didn't rewrite the immigration system. He reinforced it with sharper teeth. The promise of hope gave way to the reality of families, ripped apart, and yet the myth endured because the packaging was too seductive. This is the pattern: soaring rhetoric, harsh reality. And a media too enamored to admit the contradiction. Obama's foreign policy was supposed to reset America's image in the world. He was hailed as the anti-Bush, the calm professor who would heal international wounds. But Kelly cuts right to the bone. His reset became a series of empty gestures. Remember Syria? Obama famously drew a red line against Assad's use of chemical weapons. When that line was crossed, he folded. The red turned to pink dust, credibility evaporated, and allies stopped trusting America's words. Then came the much-hyped pivot to Asia, which in practice pivoted nowhere. His Iran deal? Oh, more about polishing his Nobel Peace Prize speech than securing long-term stability. Morgan adds his blunt reminder. Under Obama, drone strikes skyrocketed, civilians were killed, and more bombs were dropped in a calendar year than any president in history. It's not it's PR with missiles attached. He spoke like a philosopher king, but governed like a man obsessed with optics. And in the end, what's left of that grand foreign policy legacy? A hollow echo of speeches that aged like milk while the world burned on. If Obama's presidency had a centerpiece, it was the Affordable Care Act, the historic reform that was supposed to transform healthcare forever. But Kelly doesn't see brilliance. She sees a branding exercise stitched together by consultants, lobbyists, and desperation. The rollout itself was a disaster, with websites crashing like the government was running on dial-up internet. Premiums soared for many, networks shrank, and the promise of simplicity became a labyrinth of complexity. Morgan sharpens the blade. If this was the crown jewel, it was a jewel cracked from the start. Obama sold it as progress, but in practice, it was a patchwork compromise that satisfied almost no one. Wall Street insurers thrived, average families struggled, and the myth of healthcare salvation became another carefully packaged illusion. For a man who campaigned as the champion of the people, the reality was clear. His reforms often leaned more toward protecting the establishment than the working class. The speeches promised fairness. The outcomes delivered frustration. In the glow of nostalgia, Obamacare looks like a triumph, but under scrutiny. It reads like another case of style outpacing substance. Obama ran as the champion of the little guy, the man who would reign in Wall Street greed after the financial collapse. But once in office, his actions told a different story. Megyn Kelly zeroes in on the betrayal. He bailed out the very institutions that caused the crisis, funneled taxpayer money into the same banks and corporations that wrecked millions of lives, and then staffed his cabinet with Goldman Sachs alumni. The speeches condemned the bankers, but the policies protected them. Piers Morgan, in his blunt British way, strips away the polish. Obama wasn't a revolutionary. He was Wall Street's best friend, dressed as a reformer. Main Street struggled. Foreclosures devastated families and inequality widened, but the stock market soared. The man who promised change became the steward of the old system, ensuring its survival at the expense of the people he claimed to fight for. The myth of fairness became another sales pitch, another illusion of progress. Obama didn't dismantle the machine, he greased its gears and let it run smoother than ever. Obama campaigned as the antidote to George W. Bush's heavy-handed foreign policy, promising to restore constitutional values and respect for human rights. But once in office, he didn't just continue the war on terror, he upgraded it. Megyn Kelly lays out the contradiction. Obama expanded drone warfare to an unprecedented scale, authorizing thousands of strikes, many of which killed civilians, including women and children. He normalized targeted assassinations without trial, erasing due process with the click of a joystick. Piers Morgan lands the blunt punch: if Trump had run secret kill lists or dropped that many bombs, the media would have screamed bloody murder. But under Obama, the press mostly looked the other way, hypnotized by his calm tone and polished image. The man who once railed against Guantanamo Bay left it open. The man who spoke of restraint embraced surveillance and executive power. He didn't dismantle the war machine, made it sleeker, quieter, and easier to sell. Behind the Nobel Peace Prize was a commander-in-chief who perfected remote control warfare, proving once again that his greatest gift wasn't transformation, was illusion. No president in modern history has been more protected, more glorified, or more carefully insulated by the media than Barack Obama. Megyn Kelly slices into the bias. Reporters fawned over his every word. Fashion magazines put him and Michelle on their covers like celebrities, and late-night hosts treated him like royalty rather than a politician. Questions were softer, scandals were minimized, and contradictions were ignored. Piers Morgan hammers at home Obama was the media's golden child, the chosen one who could do no wrong, compared to the treatment of Trump or even Bush. Every slip magnified, every failure weaponized. But with Obama, the press bent over backward to defend the brand of hope and change. It wasn't journalism, it was cheerleading. This protection created a dangerous illusion, a presidency that looked flawless on TV while leaving deep cracks in reality. The media didn't just cover Obama, it curated him, shaping his image into something mythic. When the watchdogs become the fan club, the people lose the truth. Obama didn't just benefit from the media, he was their masterpiece. Obama entered the White House as a symbol of unity, the man who could finally heal America's racial wounds. But by the end of his presidency, the nation was more divided than ever. Megyn Kelly points to the contradiction. While Obama often spoke about transcending race, he also leaned into it when politically convenient, framing himself as both above the fray and yet deeply enmeshed in identity politics. Piers Morgan sharpens the edge. He had a once-in-a-century chance to bring people together, but instead, his words sometimes fanned the flames, deepening resentment on both sides. Ferguson, Baltimore, and countless flashpoints of unrest revealed that hope and change couldn't erase generations of mistrust. And Obama's leadership often seemed reactive rather than transformative. Instead of bridging divides, he left behind a country angrier, more suspicious, and more polarized. The myth said he would unite. The reality is that his tenure hardened the lines. His presidency showed that symbolism isn't substance and charisma isn't cohesion. Race was his great opportunity and his greatest failure. Obama's presidency wasn't just politics, it was performance. The carefully staged town halls, the slow, deliberate cadence of his speeches, the perfectly timed pause, everything was designed for effect. Megyn Kelly calls it out. He mastered the art of appearing thoughtful, while often saying little of substance. Piers Morgan strips it down even further. Obama was less a president, more a brand. Hope and change weren't policies. They were slogans. He didn't sell governance. He sold a feeling, a vibe, a movement that turned into a cult of personality. Supporters projected onto him whatever they wanted to believe, while critics struggled to pierce the armor of charm. But the danger of this illusion is that it replaces accountability with adoration. When people worship the man, instead of questioning the system, power goes unchecked.